Hey everybody, I'm Nick Von Walkerbarth and you're listening to the Von Dubcast. I like to do a little bit of intro where I talk about what's happening in my life, a little bit of background on the guest, what I felt going into the interview, what I thought of the interview, and just whatever else is going on. If you'd like to jump right to the interview, you can skip to 12 minutes. If not, we have one sponsor and we'll get right into it. Today's episode is brought to you by Freshii in Grand Prairie. Freshii is it's kind of like a mixture between fast food and health food. It's quick, it's easy, and you get delicious, healthy food. It's a pillar in my journey to try and be healthy. It's usually sometimes the only thing I do that's healthy in a day, but it's always there for me and I really enjoy it. If you're ever in GP, please stop by and check them out. Hey everybody, welcome to episode 114 of the Von Dubcast. Have a really great guest for you guys today. Chewy from Chewjitsu. He's got a gym that he runs down in Kentucky. He's got a YouTube channel that's absolutely amazing. Has helped me so much in these last couple months of my jiu-jitsu journey. And I've probably watched, I don't know, hundreds of his videos, at least. Like I would say hundreds is being conservative because you know how I listen to things on ×2 or ×3 speed to really take them in. I think some of the instructionals he does I have to listen to at normal speed because it's hard enough to follow where to put your hands and all the grips and everything going on with a technique at one speed. But in terms of the videos he does that kind of talks about the pitfalls or how to be a good training partner, some of the things you're going to run into along the journey, I love just ripping through those, and I get something out of each and every one, and there's so many there. He's been doing it for so many years and he's so consistent. He brings that work ethic of the martial arts into the kind of the YouTube space, and he's just got content after content after content. I fell in love with his I don't know if teaching style is the right word, but just how he conveys information and does it with a little bit of humor, and you get to know his personality a little bit, and it feels like you're becoming friends with this amazing instructor over YouTube. And then just on a whim, I just reached out to him just to see if he'd do the podcast, kind of just not thinking much of it, kind of thinking he wouldn't even see it. And sure enough, he saw it. He said yes, and I was over the moon, and we ended up getting to have a great little hour conversation there about his journey and all the stupid little questions that I've wanted to ask him. It's just, it's special. I think for myself, each time I take a step on this podcast journey where I get to have somebody on, where it's a conversation I didn't think I would ever get to have if you would have asked me a couple of years ago. And in these recent months, even since I started the podcast, it's the type of conversation that I didn't think I would be having for years. And to have one this early on into the journey is really special to me. So I'm really happy that I got this episode in the can. I hope I can do more with Chewy in the future. And if you are a jiu-jitsu practitioner yourself, a jiu-jitsu player, I think is what it's called, please check out his YouTube channel. Check out his Instagram. He's got great stuff. It'll all be tagged in the description below. But definitely go send some love his way. Make sure that he knows that it wasn't just him speaking into the void when he came to talk to me, that people heard it and that they liked it. Or if you know somebody that does jiu-jitsu that you could pass this conversation on to, that'd be great as well. Like always, we're sponsored by Freshii in Grand Prairie. I love Freshii, the restaurant, and I can't believe how different it is here in Grand Prairie because it's run so well. And then when I go to the city, like I was just in Edmonton, and try to go to the Freshies there, it is just awful. I know I shouldn't be talking shit about, biting the hand that feeds, but just this Freshii in Grand Prairie is so above everyone else, and it so speaks to the management and how they run it and the care. And you can see that in the employees here, and you can see it in the food. You can see it in everything. And it's at the same time very disappointing to go to any other Freshii other than the one here in Grand Prairie, but also when I am here, it feels like home, and I know I'm getting one healthy, amazing, tasty meal a day that breaks up the rest of my eating habits that maybe aren't so healthy. And I just love it. So thanks again for them. If you're in Grand Prairie, please stop by Freshii. Other than that, what have I been up to? I was just in the city for the weekend, as you guys heard. Didn't really have any plans. Just kind of wanted to, bring the dog up. And as you guys might have seen on some of my social medias, my best friend Chase just got a golden retriever puppy, and he is one of the cutest little dogs I've ever met. And we just had a full day of letting his dog Remy and my dog Ahsoka just go nuts. They are puppies, and they played all goddamn day. It was so much fun. And just to, I only get to see Chase every couple of weeks, and we are guys, so we don't talk in the interim. We like to let it all build up until we see each other, and then we just kind of download. And it was nice to catch up with him. Had a great time with that. Got to see my family before they went off on their trip to Phoenix, which was great. A little bit of family time. And what else did I do? I brought my jiu-jitsu stuff up there to try and go to a class or two. Definitely did not. Ended up leaving my jiu-jitsu stuff there like an idiot. So this week I'm just texting people currently trying to see if anyone has a spare gi so I can get to a couple classes while I'm up here in Grand Prairie. That's half the reason I came back here, was to get a couple classes in with all the friends I've made at this Champion Gym here in Grand Prairie. I got to give a shout out to Champion Gym as well. If you want to do martial arts any type, they have boxing, Krav Maga, jiu-jitsu, kickboxing, like every single thing you could ever do. Yoga. They have kids laser tag. They have like daycare kind of services. They have everything there, and it's run by amazing people. And just like I talked about with Freshie, where if there's someone really good at the top or really good people at the top, that filters down. That's the same thing with Champion. I love that gym. I love going there. They have a great weight setup and exercise equipment too. So, you could probably cancel your gym membership and just, get a membership at Champion, do a little boxing, do a little bit of jiu-jitsu, and then you have the full set of weights and all that there as well if you wanted to do that. So I couldn't speak high enough for them, but yeah, I might be able to, if I can try and steal a gi off someone, I might be able to get a few more classes in before I'm back to Edmonton for Christmas. What else was I in Edmonton for? I don't even know. Oh, I wanted to go to those fights on Friday. That's what it was. I ended up not getting tickets, but there was a Unified MMA 42, I believe, maybe 43. I don't know. It's a Canadian MMA organization, I guess is the word. And I actually had one of the guys from Champion Gym, Ian Stobie. He was fighting on the amateur undercard and got a big win. That's huge for him. He was looking really sharp in the gym. I just avoided rolling with him as it got closer and closer to fight week because he got that serious look in his eyes. And I thought, oh man, that guy's going to rip me in half. And hopefully he went and ripped this guy in half. I wasn't able to catch his fight because they had all the main card on Fight Pass, but they didn't have the amateur undercard. So I was a little bummed I didn't get to watch it, but I'm really happy that he won. And the rest of that card was awesome. I watched it on Fight Pass, and really amazing Canadian talent up and coming. It's so exciting. It's going to be great to see some of these guys in the UFC in a couple of years, or Bellator or PFL, all those different things. So that was fun on Friday, Saturday. Another great UFC card, absolutely spectacular, just finish after finish. And Jordan Levitt, the Monkey King, one of my favorites. It just seems like every card has at least 4 or 5 of my favorite fighters on there almost consistently every weekend. I just love it. I get such a kick out of it. The cards have been stacked city, and I don't know what I'm going to do with myself for these next 2 weekends that don't have UFC. I'm probably going to cry and just sit by myself, lick my wounds. They just canceled the Oiler game, so that's great. Oh, there's also an Oilers game Saturday night. Finally see them turn it around. That was great. What else did I do this week? I don't even want to talk about this. You guys are about to hear something really stupid I did. So I was really excited to get Corey Cross back on the podcast this week. So right before I went to Edmonton on Wednesday, we did an awesome conversation, had probably an hour chat, talked about, some old stories, some of the pranksters from back in the day in the NHL when Corey played. And it was just a great conversation, and didn't do anything with the files after I recorded it. Kind of hopped right in the vehicle and left. So when I got back here today to get this episode ready and to just get this episode ready for tomorrow, I was hopped onto my desktop, was just renaming stuff, right? Like I got the audio files for this episode sent to myself in an email so I could put it on my different computer to record this. And then I went to send Corey's audio files over as well. I hope you guys can see where this is going. And I did that. I sent the audio files to me, so I have them. That's great. And then I went to go, all the Zoom recording just have the date and a bunch of numbers for when they are. So I always rename them what the guest is. And I went to hit rename. And guess what button's right beside rename? Yeah, it's delete. And I deleted our conversation, the video files, and the audio originals. Luckily, I had just sent myself the audio files so that I could transfer computers. But that moment where you say like, did I just do that? And try and go back, and I just Googled on my phone how to undo deleted files, and I said, I just hit Command Z, that's perfect. And I had that moment of, thank God I can do that. And I hit it, doesn't work. Hit, the Windows Z, maybe they just have the wrong thing. Doesn't work. And I just have to slowly let it sink in that I fucking deleted the video for that conversation. And I'm so mad at myself, and sorry if this has been a shit intro, because it happened probably 4 minutes before I decided to do this intro. Maybe I should have taken a little bit more time to calm down. I don't know. I'm mad at myself, but that is a learning lesson. I hope I never fucking do that again. Maybe there's some guru that knows computers like the backside of their hand. Maybe there's a way I can contact Zoom and see if they have it stored locally on their files. I know they have some cloud-based services like that. Maybe it's not all for naught, but I'm just really mad at myself apologies in advance to Corey for him giving me an hour of his time. And now we still have the audio, which is what's most important. It's a podcast. Video is just an added bonus. So it's not the end of the world, but God, stupid. I just, I hate doing dumb stuff like that. It bugs me. Yeah. What was I even talking about? I don't even know how I got onto that at this point, but oh boy. What else? I don't think that's anything else. All the things I usually say on these intros, if you could help me out, subscribing to the podcast on whatever you listen to it on, that really helps. Subscribing to the YouTube channel, whenever the guest is on, giving them a follow on their social medias, going to whatever they have to sell, supporting them. That's how you support me. That's the best way. If you could do all those things, I really appreciate it. Other than that, just with the holidays coming up, have a great holiday. I hope you get to see some people. I hope you get to, have a little bit of fun times, drink a little eggnog, throw a little rum in it, all that good stuff. Tell the people around you love them, and don't delete files, hit rename. Don't be an idiot. Don't be like Nick. Other than that, enjoy this great conversation with Chewy. I hope I can do this multiple times with a guy like this of his caliber. It really felt very special to me, and I hope that comes across to you guys, even if maybe you're not a big martial arts fan yourself. I hope you can enjoy I hope it's clear, the clear passion that I have for these types of conversations, and how happy I was to be able to just be sitting there talking with someone that I've listened to, like I said, like hundreds of hours on. And that was just so cool to me. And I hope you guys get to enjoy it alongside through me somehow. All right. Okay. I'll see you guys in the outro, and bye. All right. Thank you so much for being here, Chewy.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
It's a real honor. I know I said this to you a little bit before, but I need to do a little bit of gushing before, because getting into this jiu-jitsu journey, the YouTube learning has been a big part of that journey. You only get so many hours on the mat, but I found it's such an addictive thing that I'm just trying to find more and more. And when I stumbled across your YouTube channel and all your YouTube videos, I've probably, watched 500 videos in the last 2 months of you, and you're a real superstar. And I thought it was just me, but like I was just telling you, it seems like everyone around the jiu-jitsu gym all is very familiar with your work, and it seems like you're quite the personality within this world that I'm just walking into. I'm curious to ask, when did that start to change, when you started to become a fixture of jiu-jitsu like you are? I mean, maybe that's a bit pretentious. I'll say it. You don't have to. When did you start to notice that switch, when it was really becoming something bigger than maybe what you had planned when you first started off, throwing videos out?
It is pretentious to say, isn't it? But it's one of these things where I noticed that the time that I really started noticing it was in 2016 was probably the time where I really noticed that all of a sudden there was a shift, and it only got progressively more and more. But I remember me and two of my students did this tournament kind of on the last minute. Yeah. We were in North Carolina together. Mm-hmm. And I remember I just got done competing. I was sitting over in our little spot that we had claimed out in the corner with our stuff. And we were sitting just maybe 5 feet to the right of us was a really high level world champion, right? Mm-hmm. Who had competed that day. And I'm sitting there doing my stuff. And then all of a sudden, I'm messing around my phone and my bag. My head's down. I'm just doing some stuff. And my student was like, "Hey, Chewy, you got someone here." And then all of a sudden I look, and there's a line of people that are there, and they're like, they want to come say hello. I'm like, "Oh, sure. Okay. Yeah, let's do this." This is because it was new to me. Yeah. And we're taking pictures and doing the whole thing. And they're, sort of telling me what they got from the videos. And then I remember even that same day, I was watching one of my students competed, and a guy came up and touched me on the shoulder. He said, "Hey, man." And I turned around. I said, "Hey, what's going on?" He said, I just want to thank you." I said, "For what?" And he said, "I want to thank you because, I lost my first competition. And then I watched one of your videos where you showed you losing and then competing again. And I did the same thing today. And today, I think he took second that day. He won several matches and lost in the finals, but had a much better performance." And he was like, "I did it because I immediately signed up after watching that video." And so that was around the time where things began to make this shift, where I began to sort of, I guess, realize that the videos and all that stuff had sort of grown some legs within the community.
Yeah. And how long had you been making videos in that, at that time around 2016? We were probably already in the game for quite a while when it kind of took that big shift.
I mean, I was obviously jiu-jitsu for a long, long
Yeah.
time. I've
Yeah.
been, that was a thing, but really the videos were, I'd mess around with them from time to time, maybe every now and then I'd post a video very irregularly. Like, I mean, like 1 or 2 videos per year.
Oh, really?
And then in 2015 was like when I really actually was like, all right, I'm going to really dive into this thing. And I started doing it primarily for my students,
Right.
because I was posting these drilling videos for them so that they wouldn't just go to our drilling sessions and screw off.
Yeah.
I wanted them to get some work in. They would go to an open mat. They're like, yeah, we're going to drill. And then I would like be around and watch them, and their drilling sessions, there was no drilling. They would just hang out, talk, and then they'd roll.
Yeah.
And so I filmed it for them. And then after that, all of a sudden I started getting lots of questions from people whom were just like, hey, like I've got this random question for jiu-jitsu, but what do you think about this? And it just kind of grew from there.
And that's for myself. Those are the ones I really enjoy. I love the technique videos too. Those are great. But what I really enjoyed was the Q&As that you do, the questions that get sent into you, and with all the history you have within jiu-jitsu and the lessons you've learned, lots of them the hard way, and the personal experiences you can share. I found that for myself was awesome, of just all these different things. And when I did my first couple classes at the start of October there and started to get addicted to it, I also don't really know many people. None of my friends really do jiu-jitsu. So there's so many questions I have. And just to have that as a resource is something that it became clear to me quite quickly how much of a resource that was going to be. And then it was just a snowball from there. And I'm watching, maybe a couple videos a day. Then you're watching, 2, 3, 5, 6 videos a day. And I love on YouTube, you can speed them right up so you can crush through, they're not long videos, 5-10 minutes, but if you throw that on double speed, you can really get through them, and you're just taking in all this jiu-jitsu knowledge. And
I don't know how you listen to me if you listen to me on double speed. I speak fast sometimes as it is. I get really excited and I start speaking fast. You can typically watch my videos, and if I get really excited about something, I start speaking. I actually had a lot of guys asking me like, hey man, can you speak slower? Because I would get really fast. So if you're listening to me on double speed, then good luck to understanding all that gibberish.
No shit. But I have plenty of years of practice. That's something that I've been doing for a long time. And just like jiu-jitsu, you build up to it. And that's actually kind of dovetails nice into another question I had of that YouTube world is a little bit different, right? There's a lot of things that are probably going to be applicable from all the things you've learned in jiu-jitsu, hard work, consistency, all those things, but it's a bit different of a beast to learn. It's kind of its own little world, that YouTube thing of how to find success in that. How was that for you, of learning all that? Or was it just you enjoyed making the videos and you just kind of let it grow organically and you weren't concentrating too much on making it grow? You're just kind of were enjoying making the videos? Or did you really get into what thumbnails are going to work, changing titles, of trying to, tap into the algorithms? Because I hear lots of YouTubers that have success like yourself, they really spend a lot of time on that end of the business.
Yeah, I spend almost no time in the algorithm stuff because the algorithms change. It's like the thing that I noticed is that, like, if you can make content that people actually like, that they want to share, well, then you don't really have to trick anybody to watch your stuff, right? It's one of these things where a lot of people, and from what I've noticed, is like they want to trick the algorithm because they haven't put any time into their thing to really have anything to share in the first place, right? So it's like a person that's done jiu-jitsu for a couple of years, and then they want to start like a YouTube channel on it, which, I mean, that's very nice. And if you want to share something and maybe you take people along for your ride, it's fine. But like, you've been doing this for 2 years. Like, I have 2 decades of training that I can share with people and experiences. And so I think that a lot of times people have to do that sort of thing where we have to get into the algorithm, and I've got to pay for ads and stuff like this because the content you're producing is not necessarily up to stuff. Now, there are periods of times where like you get into really competitive spaces, and that can be a whole thing. But I think if your content's really good and people really like it, they end up just sharing it with their friends.
For sure.
And it's been that's kind of what happened with me. And so I pay attention to some stuff, like I'm into the art of like copywriting and understanding how headlines and stuff like that work. And I study it because I think it's a very fascinating subject. But as far as like the thumbnails got to make the letters green because if they're green, none of that. I don't care about that stuff. If that's what's going to make you click, then I really don't care that much anyway.
Right.
I started making the videos and I just enjoy them. I enjoy doing them. Now, I want to I'd like to have some, like when I got into it, I'm talking about my mindset when I was further back. I wanted to have success with it, but it's kind of like jiu-jitsu. I want to have success with it and I really want to be good at it, but I know it's going to take a little bit. And at the same time, like I just kind of enjoy doing it anyway. So I'm just going to do it. And I think that's kind of the way that it works for me. I don't really get too obsessive of like little granular details. I'm more of like, I find something I like doing and I just keep doing that thing and I focus on being better at it. But I don't get so upset about if it doesn't work out or not. Because like, for instance, in jiu-jitsu, I've gotten so many questions about people that are like, so like they get so frustrated that they want to quit. And I never had that frustration. I've never wanted to quit. I was like, why? Like I have terrible days on the mat sometimes, but I don't want to quit. It's just a terrible day. Right. And heck, even, you know, a lot of times I've been thinking about this idea recently that like a lot of times, like we set these big goals for ourselves and goals end up being this weird thing where they can be amazing because they can fill your belly with fire. They can get you up in the morning and you'll wake up early, go to sleep late, and you're just so focused on this thing. And then if you get that goal and you put a lot into it, you got to be careful because it can sort of lull you into complacency and you can lose your drive because you put so much into that thing. Whereas failures a lot of times are fantastic teachers and they sort of bring a clarity to your what's going on because they show you things that you need to fix. And so I never really was too upset with failures or mess ups or anything like that. And then even with YouTube videos, right? Like sometimes I make a video and I think it's going to be a fantastic video. I thought it was great. I really thought I nailed the whole performance of the thing that it is, right? And then, you know, it does nothing. And then I'll post a video sometimes and like, this video is going to bomb, but you know what? I tried and it is what it is. And then people love it. And so it's like, all right, whatever, you know? So, but along that, you sort of figure out, you know, what your audience likes versus what you like. And you kind of find something that meshes in between.
And I love what you say about, you know, just loving the process of doing it and not getting too caught up on the success. And I think that's applicable to anything you do. I think that's definitely apparent in podcasting for sure. You get these people that forget to fall in love with the process and they get so focused on what is it going to be? What do people want to hear from you? Well, do I need to make it shorter? Do I need to make it longer? And not concentrating, what are they enjoying out of it? And you see those ones crash and burn all the time. And it's something to be said about doing things for the right reasons. I think that goes for goals too. Like you said, goals can be good and bad. And I think more people need to put more emphasis on how important it is, what goals you set, how manageable, how much thought do you put into those goals? Are you just putting something to have a target on the board to shoot for? Or are you actually really spending some time to decide what you want to do? Why is that a goal? Why is that important to you? Is it for the right reasons? Are you setting this goal because you want, you know, fame and fortune? Are you setting this goal is because that is something that's easily achievable. You know, you can set your mind to it. There's so many things that go into it. And I think that is something that people just think, oh, I just need a goal, or they don't put enough thought into the goal where they ended up doing a detriment to themselves and in where they want to be in the end of it. Right.
Right. And a lot of times I've seen this thing where people, they just look at other people and they go, me too. Right. So for instance, like with podcasts, here's a great example. 2020 was like, it was the year of like the graveyards of podcasts and YouTube channels. Because what happened was everybody's sitting around and they go, yeah, he's got a podcast. Me too. Right. Like me too. I'm going to do one. Right. And like, I don't know why I want to do a podcast, but hey, that asshole's making some money doing a podcast. I'm going to make one. Right. And then you get into it and you really don't like doing it that much. And so, you know, it's like, if you're going to do something like that, you really need to find something that sort of you enjoy. Like for instance, with the YouTube videos, I enjoy talking out ideas in a long-winded way. I love listening to lectures. Like for me, if you were to look at my phone usage time, I spend very little time on social media or any of that stuff, but I friggin' burn up Audible and I burn up YouTube because I listen to lectures and like audiobooks and things like that. I love listening to people talk out ideas. I just find it fun. It's enjoyable to me. And so when I do the videos, a lot of times it's like I could probably maybe answer like 90% of my videos with keep training. But that doesn't really, that doesn't really help anyone, right? Like that doesn't help anyone. That's like the answers that you'll get from people sometimes when they're trying to be a hard ass. But it's like, if I can connect to you in a way like that I like being connected to, where I share out ideas and these sort of like these twists and turns with the ideas, it's a fun thing to do. And I find it enjoyable. And so I like doing the videos. I don't need a lot of motivation to get up and do it because I enjoy doing what I'm doing. And I think that if you're going to set a goal, the first thing is that it should come from a place of enthusiasm in you rather than just, I'm going to do that too. Yeah, me too. You know, I'm just going to do it too.
And it's funny, there's another side of that Me Too aspect, because I think that's very visually apparent to people. Everyone sees that, right? And I think there's a lot of, memes going around about, especially during 2020, everyone's got a podcast, everyone's starting a podcast. And me, as someone who's very much the same way, I love long form content. I love 4 or 5 hour podcasts. Those are my favorite, right? Audiobooks, just physical books I love to read. That was always something I really enjoyed. And I knew I want to start a podcast, but it seemed like there was so much, everyone was looking at it like, oh, you're just trying to, be one of those Me Too guys. I never wanted to be seen like that, but it was such a true passion that was holding me back. I didn't want to be seen as that one way. And it was so silly looking back on it, of something that once I did try it, I loved it so much, and I'm so passionate about it. And I'm actually taking, kind of changing my whole life to go around this thing that I thought, I probably could have started it years earlier if I would have let that stupid little, what other people are going to think about it fly away earlier in my life. And it's just so silly how you can let something so small affect something that really could change your life. And I think that's, probably a lot of people with trying something like jiu-jitsu, maybe there's certain things they'd heard or what you have to be. And I love what your YouTube channel and YouTube channels like yours and what podcasts do. It really makes it much more approachable, so that all those little silly things get addressed. And now people can kind of have a better understanding when they're going into it. And that's kind of something that I have really enjoyed about getting into jiu-jitsu. Was I've listened to so many podcasts of people that love jiu-jitsu, right? The Joe Rogans of the world and all these people, and had so many little tips and tricks about what jiu-jitsu is going to be when you start it, that I went into it not blind. I went into it with all this knowledge, and then adding on to that, finding your channel and being able to take on all this. I feel like if you would have taken this 10 years ago, if you were going to start jiu-jitsu, that was going to be a very steep learning curve comparative to today, because you don't have all these amazing resources at your fingertips to go in and know 100%. The first day I knew I'm about to get smashed. Doesn't matter how strong I am, right? I knew that going in. I knew that your ego is going to flare up, and there's times, and that's how you get hurt, right? I knew all these things going in. I felt like I was in such a better place and so lucky to have that. And I'm just wondering, have you seen jiu-jitsu change because you get people that come in off the street that now have this amazing resource and are coming in, and probably the normal pitfalls that are there for the first 6 months, couple of years of jiu-jitsu are so broadly addressed that you're not going to escape all of them, but maybe 1 or 2 of them you can kind of step around by having that. I wonder if you notice, different people coming in the gym that have a different level of understanding or a different mindset than what you were seeing earlier on in your journey, when most people walking in the door had very little idea what they were getting into.
Yeah, it's interesting. So a lot of people back in the day when I first started, they knew what jiu-jitsu was. And the reason being is because you couldn't find it.
Right.
There wasn't like the way that marketing's done to these days. Like our gym, for instance, is very well marketed, right? We know how to market, we know how to do these things properly. Yeah. And so we pull in a lot of people. So people did not find gyms back then because they weren't marketed well. Like for instance, I wanted to do jiu-jitsu, and I had to find my coach on some back page of some website on bjj.org. And then I contacted him through AOL Instant Messenger, right? Yeah. So, I mean, it was just this whole mess. Right. And some of you, if someone's younger listening to this, they may have no idea what that is. Yeah. And so we knew what it was, and the information was there. It was just harder to find, but you could watch fights and you could come across grainy VHS tapes of grappling if you wanted to. And, we all knew. So now it's actually, you get more people that don't really know what it is because they heard about it. Like, oh man, Joe Rogan's talking about this jiu-jitsu thing. They look online, jiu-jitsu, boom, they find a website, sign me up. And then within a day they're training, and they maybe haven't done a ton of information. Now, then there's there are people that come in that have watched a ton of information before they come in. And in both cases, I find it interesting because a lot of times information before it's being met with some sort of realistic problem or struggle or necessity. What they said is there's information ahead of time, and then there's information in the nick of time. Yeah. When you learn information ahead of time, it's fun and it can help a little bit, but it's not all that great. Like for instance, people will watch a video and they'll see, okay, I need to do this when I go to class. And then when they get to class, the thing is you understand it in your your thinking mind.
But experientially, it's much different.
Right. You don't understand it in your body yet. So it really doesn't mean anything yet. Yeah. Now it can help augment it a little bit, because then you're like, okay, here's what that guy was talking about. And then YouTube videos are great for, ooh, I have a problem. Let me go search. Ooh, I found a possible solution to my problem or an ideal in my problem. And I think that's what can be really useful to people. but no, we actually get more people now that don't really know about it because of the ease of finding it.
Yeah.
But again, what it does is it allows people to rapidly take in more information faster once they're exposed to it. Whereas before, let's say if I was training jiu-jitsu and I wanted to, back when I was a white belt, and I, wanted to learn more half guard, or maybe I saw some guy use a half guard position and I really wanted to learn something. Well, DVDs and instructionals were super scarce back then. And so I would have to find someone that knew half guard. It was like seeking out the Kung Fu master in a movie. I had to go seek the guru to find him to teach me this half guard stuff, because otherwise it wasn't available to you. And so you would find these moves, and information traveled much more slowly. And you would sometimes find like techniques that nobody knew because they hadn't trained with these guys, and these guys are the ones developing it. Whereas now everybody makes an instructional, like you can buy an instructional course, you can watch YouTube videos, and you could rapidly take in lots of new information and new techniques to try in your gym. And so what I've noticed is that it really doesn't affect all that much in the beginning, because no matter what you think you know in the beginning, you don't know anything. Until it's been experienced with the body, you don't really know anything. But what ends up happening is people now have a resource that they can use to help to study, and that when they get on the mat, they get much better faster because of it, if they use it correctly.
Yeah. Oh, that's so that's so awesome to hear, because it so matches exactly what I've been feeling these last 2 months. Because like I said, I had listened for so many years. I'd wanted to do jiu-jitsu, and I was really, a chicken about it, if I'm honest. I wanted to try it for so long, but something held me back. And I was listening to all these things, thinking I'm taking in all this information. Once I do try it, I'm going to be so far ahead of everybody. But what I kept hearing along the way was all this stuff you hear, it's nothing once you get in there. And I couldn't, and I knew that, I knew whatever I think I know, I'm going to be surprised when I go in there, but I had no idea how different it is. Like, just one of the first days we're learning a rear naked choke. And I had watched, everybody's seen this in the world, because it was right after some big event. I think it was after the Tony Ferguson, Kevin Lee fight, and Eddie Bravo came on to kind of talk about, Ferguson's training and what he went into that. And he was breaking down something about the chokes, and they were talking about how you really do a rear naked choke. And I got all the, you put your hand here, right? It's not exactly what you would expect from what you see in the movies from back in the day of, the old style. And I thought, oh man, that is so counterintuitive to what I thought. And I thought in my head, since I watched that, I thought, I kind of know how to do a rear. If I ever got in a situation, I would know how to do it. And then went into the first day, and I had actually done, I think, 3 classes before the pandemic that I just went in and tried. I didn't really break through. I couldn't really, make as many friends as I like to. It was not the experience I wanted it to be. So then going back into it, when I was trying again, I booked some private classes the first time. The first day, first private class, rear naked choke. I said, I know how to do this. And I slap it on, my trainer, Randy, who I've had on the podcast, awesome guy. He's a fighter. He's done it all. And he's just sitting there smiling, just like, he's like, you're not doing anything to me right now. And I couldn't figure it out, because I know this move. And he just showed me a few things, squeeze with your legs, pull down, like just change 2 or 3 little things. And it was night and day difference. And I could not believe how simple the changes were, and how far away from understanding I was from where I thought I was. I thought I was really good. If there's something I'm missing, it's going to be a small thing, and I'm going to be pretty good at it. I thought I was on the right road. I was in the wrong county. I was so far off. And then repeatedly, every single move I thought I understood, I was so wrong with everything. It looks, I watch a lot of UFC and all this stuff, and the things you think you pick up are so different from what it actually is in reality. And that lesson cannot be taught, like you're saying, like that, unless you go in and feel it, you will never understand that. There's no one that can put it to words. Even if you let, the best jiu-jitsu minds in the world have as many hours as they want to, you will never be able to accurately portray that difference. And that's just, what's got to get people onto the mats, I guess, is to go and find that for themselves. And that vulnerability you feel that first time is it's hard to find an equivalent for in anything else I found.
Well, it's the same thing in life, no matter what we do. Anytime you get into something new that's like a skill-based thing, you're going to be in a situation where you're going to go into it. You're going to study, because now we have all these resources for anything. You can look on Google, and you can Google how to do anything. the issue becomes then when you start trying to do it,
Yeah.
you quickly realize, let me figure this out. And then you run into the actual problems, and then you have to do it on the fly, and figure things out. I mean, I'm sure, you probably did all kinds of research on podcasting and all the podcast equipment and and then probably the very first time you got ready to do one, you probably had a problem.
Oh, yeah.
And then you had to figure it out, right? Like, I mean, it's the nature of the beast.
Yeah.
And so this is why action is so much more important than just like information.
Yeah.
Information's great, and we've got plenty of it. And you've got plenty of people who know a lot of stuff about a lot of stuff, but they don't really truly know it because it hasn't been used in actual like situations, right? Yeah. So like, okay, like for instance, there's a glut of people in the YouTube space and online who are business coaches. Who have never actually ran a business successfully. Well, let me take that back. Their successful business is teaching you how to run a successful business. Right. And so you've got a person that's like, it's almost like a person teaching you how to do jiu-jitsu techniques who's never actually like competed or rolled in jiu-jitsu. You don't really know. You have a lot of information you can talk about, regurgitate, but you don't have actual like real live in the trenches like work doing your thing. And so it's just one of those things where you see this all over the place. And so, but you have to be careful about it because again, it's not. There's no substance to it. It's very weak.
But what the funniest thing is if you'd have any type of knowledge within that realm and somebody is trying to speak to you without that deep core base of experiential understanding, it is very apparent. I graduated university 5 or 6 years ago and I took business, and there was plenty of professors that you could tell from the day I walked in that, because I worked a job since I was 12 years old. I've never not had a job. And I had worked around my dad's a businessman. I was around business a lot. And when I'd walk into those classes, it was so apparent that they had never worked in the real world of daily life. They went right from university to teaching, and they've never actually experienced business. They can talk about it, but it was so clear to me so quickly. And the information they were getting, it was piss poor. And it was very disappointing to me. It was very disenfranchising of, I'm supposed to come here to learn all this knowledge. And very clearly, this is not what they have to offer. And it was, pretty disappointing. And that was something where once I graduated, I found podcasts, and I just found all this information out there that's, in a format that I really enjoy already, like, right? Long form conversation where it's not just, learn these dates. This is my teaching style that I'm trying to force on you. This is my information I'm trying to cram into your head. You could pick and choose what you got from it. I just found it amazing. But what really stuck out to me was how obvious it is when someone doesn't have that experiential knowledge and is trying to fake the funk a little bit. And there's plenty of kids that didn't have that knowledge and just were eating it up. They couldn't tell at all. And it was kind of sad to me that they were probably taking in this, half-cooked information. Some of it's good, some of it's bad, because they've never actually had that process of seeing what works in the real world, right? But it was sad for me to watch these kids that have never worked just being inundated with all this, untested information. I think that's the perfect example. You said, like a jiu-jitsu instructor that's never done jiu-jitsu. It just doesn't work all that good. I'm curious for you. I had heard in some of the videos about when you went from, a jiu-jitsu student to a jiu-jitsu teacher and had a gym. I'm curious what kind of business knowledge you had going into that, or was that you jumping right into the deep end of learning how to do business through this thing that you loved, or had you had kind of business experience in the past before you jumped into it?
No. So I that was me jumping into the deep end because it's what I wanted to do. I grew up poor. None of my family members owned businesses. Some of my family members did pretty well for themselves. Like my uncle, he worked for Apple and Cisco and all these big companies, and he was a consultant, but I didn't know any of them that ran businesses. And so this was brand new to me. And so I just learned everything on the fly, out of necessity. And again, it was one of those things where I initially just started trying stuff, and I failed a bunch. And luckily, I've also got a business partner too, who he complements some of my weaknesses, because if you're honest with yourself, you're going to be weak in some areas. As a business owner / entrepreneur type person. And so I'm weak in some areas. I have some very glaring weaknesses, and some good strengths, and he has the same. And so luckily our two sort of like, we match up pretty well. And so, that was super helpful too. And so, but I just figured things out, because what happens is, again, I could then hire mentors and coaches, and I could get courses from people who run successful businesses, and I can learn about anything. I've got endless amounts of books and video. I mean, it's like, if you want anything, the big problem is understanding the right questions to ask, because a lot of times you don't get the right questions until you get in the thick of it, right? Like you get an overall knowledge, but until you actually get into the business, you don't actually understand like what the right questions to ask are. It's like, it might be something like, oh, okay, I want my business to make more money. Well, great. That's a great goal. But then you go, well, then you get into the business. You're like, well, how do I generate more leads? Right. Well, that's a much better question. Then you can go down a whole rabbit hole there. But I didn't know anything what I was doing.
Yeah. And, or how do I bring my costs down? How do I bring my profit up? Right. There's so many different ways to attack that question, but until you get your feet in the water, you won't get to that point where you'll get to those questions. I'm curious from the business side of it. Do you remember back to any of the things that you thought you had an idea about with business? Just like I thought I knew how to do a rear naked choke, that, oh, this is the easy part of business, that you went in and you realized as you were getting into it that you had a misunderstanding of how it worked?
No, I didn't go into it with any sort of like ideas of like, so like in jiu-jitsu, I did. In jiu-jitsu, I thought I was going to be close to a blue belt because I had wrestled before. And then I got in there and got my butt kicked all over the place, and I realized that was not right. With business, I did not go into it with any sort of preconceived notion as to like what I was going to do. I did all kinds of things that were complete flops, but as far as me going into it being like, this is the way it's going to be, I had no clue what I was doing. Right. And I knew this. And so like, I was willing to just basically learn and try anything.
Right. Right. And that's, and that's kind of the healthiest mindset you can go into anything with, right? Like, that's where I feel like I'm, I thought I'd be ahead with all my knowledge of, what I thought of technique and all these things. I thought that was going to be, but what I'm really finding of my biggest skill set going into jiu-jitsu as a new one is knowing that, of just knowing I'm going into it knowing I am going to be the worst for a long time, and I'm completely fine with that. I get excited when I get tapped out. I want to learn from everybody. And I think had I not had all that priming going in, I wouldn't be that way. And I feel like it's such a helpful mindset to be, like anything, like business jiu-jitsu, is to go into that with that mindset. But I feel like that's something I wouldn't have had if I would have just let my more competitive nature and not have had that tempered by all these really smart people that have been around the block so many times telling me before going into it that, hey, no matter what you think you're going to do, just go into it. Like you can learn anything. It doesn't matter if it's a white belt that shows you something or a black belt. If it's something that helps you, that's fine, right? You need to obviously take it with a grain of salt, because sometimes you can probably learn some bad things from people that don't know what they're talking about. But I just, at this point, I know so little, and that became so apparent so quickly how little you know, that you just pretend you're a sponge and you can learn something from everybody. And that is just, it made it A, more enjoyable, and B, I think more, it increases the progress that you're able to take in, because you're not busy banging your head against the wall, being frustrated over something that was an eventuality, right? That there's certain things that are going to happen. You're going to go through these things. And that's what I love about your videos, is how on the nose so many of your titles are of exactly what you're feeling after that class today. You hop onto YouTube and you have 3 videos on that exact subject on exactly what you're feeling. And I'm sure that comes with, like you say, decades of experience and not only going through it yourself, but then having students come through and watching them struggle with these same things and really seeing the recurring patterns and being able to address that. And I just think that is amazing that you're able to do that, and how special that is for people like me. I just enjoy it so much that it's added a layer to this jiu-jitsu journey that I didn't think was going to be there, especially because, like I said, I don't have very many friends that do jiu-jitsu, not as many people to talk to. And it's like having a little community for those questions. Whereas I think this would be a lot more lonely process if it wasn't for your channel and channels like yours. Right. And that's an amazing positive. And maybe on the other side of that is kind of what you were talking about earlier, of how it used to be, where you didn't have all those resources and you had to, seek out that knowledge in a little bit more extensive way. Do you think there's anything missing? Do you miss anything from those old days of before all those, DVDs and things were so easily available, all the YouTube stuff where you had to really put the effort in to get that knowledge? Do you miss anything from those days?
No, I mean, I think that ultimately, the difference is that the people that got into jiu-jitsu, that excelled in jiu-jitsu back then, like myself, we were just really hyper focused, and we were into it. And let me sort of stress this: I'm super competitive. Yeah, I want to be amazing at everything I do. I don't do anything to be mediocre. Yeah. That said, I just don't take losing personally, and so I don't take failure all that poorly, I don't care. I'm like, I'm going to keep going.
Yeah.
But, so a lot of us had excelled in it. We just were going to do it. Now, if you put people like myself now in jiu-jitsu, like today, we would still be the same people. We would just be even better than what we were.
For sure.
And, you have a larger pool of people. So, I think it's a much better thing now. There can be this nostalgia about it, right? Like, oh, back then, we did this thing. But overall, I mean, I think it's far better now. And I think that even from the standpoint of like being able to make a living, like it's great. Like I love being able to make a living doing jiu-jitsu. I never got into it thinking I'd be able to do this. So like, this is like a dream come true. So I think the days now are much better than what they were. I think the only difference is that you get more people, and this existed back in the day too. This isn't a new phenomenon.
Yeah.
You'll get more people that are newer to jiu-jitsu that think they know stuff more than what they really do because they've watched a video and they can regurgitate something, right? They can watch a particular video of a coach showing a particular move, and they can try to talk about it as if they know what they're talking about, when in reality, they have no idea what they're talking about. Yeah. They're just repeating what they've heard someone else say. You get that more, but that was always around. It's just as the pool of people get bigger, that kind of thing happens more.
For sure. And that makes sense. And one of the biggest things that I realize of how silly it is to think that you can learn something perfectly from a video is when you're actually doing drilling in class and you have, the teacher showing the technique probably 5 or 6 times in a row, detail by detail. And then 10 seconds passes, you get with your partner over there and you go to do it. You get halfway through and how did it go? What do you mean? And you almost have to call the teacher over right away. It's like, if you think you can learn something in a video, if you're not actually practicing how difficult that is to remember everything. And something I struggle with so much with almost every technique is I get so concentrated if I'm doing something up here, like a rear naked choke, I'm not even doing anything with my legs. My legs are going limp or trying to do an arm bar and remembering to squeeze my legs together and stuff. Just, it's a different skill of even how to use multiple different parts of your body at the same time fluidly like that. There's so many different parts you wouldn't even, if you'd never stepped foot on the mat, issues you wouldn't even know are there that you will never see from a video, right? Like of just things that will only come from practice and issues that will only come up until you feel them, right? And that was very fascinating to me that I had no idea I was in for that. I'm curious again to ask about, you mentioned wrestling, and that was kind of what your first grappling art was. And that was something where I think for me, as my journey alongside martial arts, never really got into it myself, but of being a big fan and watching all the time, loved UFC as a kid, but wasn't really allowed to watch it. And then as I got older and started to get into it myself, I just fell deeper and deeper in love with it. And because that was my path, when it comes to grappling, all I knew about grappling was jiu-jitsu, and wrestling was something for whatever reason, I think I can probably give this the medal to Hoist Gracie for why I thought this way, but it was such a dominant showing. And there's always the story around of what jiu-jitsu was that I feel like in my head, wrestling was always discounted to me, and I never gave it its due. And now as I'm getting further into this, the hardcoreness of being, an MMA fan, you really start to respect wrestling very quickly. And my understanding was always, jiu-jitsu is the best thing on the ground. If you don't know jiu-jitsu, you're kind of SOL. And I've been having conversations. I will have a couple guys within this realm on MMA Breeze. He's an MMA journalist, and he's very into wrestling. And we had some interesting conversations. He was telling me that he thinks if you took the highest level of wrestlers and let them run through ADCC, they would have no problem. And it's just a different type of hip control and learning how to break people and all that. I'm curious, because you so clearly have a love for wrestling and jiu-jitsu and all these grappling arts. I'm curious how you see it. Do you think that is something where these worlds just haven't merged enough for us to really say how one fares against the other at all these different levels, and there's so many different variables that go into it? Or do you think we have a pretty good understanding of how those two arts stack up against each other, maybe at a couple different levels? Because obviously that's different at the highest peaks versus amateur levels. I think that's probably a much different conversation.
So are we talking about sort of a theoretical idea of the best jiu-jitsu practitioners versus the best wrestlers in like the Olympics?
That's kind of the idea. That's what me and him were talking about, and that's what started this whole conversation, so we could address them there. But that kind of just got my mind rolling. I'm curious at every level of kind of how it stacks up, because I think I think I'm clearly wrong about where I had jiu-jitsu placed in that hierarchy. I think it's much more even, if not maybe I could make an argument going the other way after what I've seen these last couple of years.
Well, it depends on what your goal is, right? I mean, this is I hate these arguments because it's like me and one of my students who's a college wrestling champion. We were talking about this yesterday, and I don't like when people compare jiu-jitsu and wrestling because they're two different sports.
For sure.
They're not the same thing. They don't have the same goals. They don't have the same focuses, right? It's just the way it is. An Olympic level wrestler, a college level wrestler, like a D1 and in the United States, they're friggin' amazing. They're so explosive and they're fast and they're technical. There's a lot of ground wrestling that is that you'll see if you know wrestling, you'll actually see it used in jiu-jitsu, just used differently. And so you see all this stuff, and then jiu-jitsu is just different. The focus is different. The speed is different. The tempo is different. And if you took the problem, and see, here's the problem too, is like, if you start comparing the two, we all kind of become intermeshed because, now you've got a lot of wrestlers that kind of know what jiu-jitsu is, and they've even tried it a little bit. You've got jiu-jitsu guys that know a little bit of wrestling. And so you're like, well, which one's better? Well, it's like, well, how do you know which one's better now? Or, whatever. So why compare? They're just two different things. So I don't really like to compare them because of the fact that we're not focused on the same thing. An ADCC rule set is definitely going to favor a wrestler because they have takedowns. However, you put them in a submission only, and what are they going to do? They don't know submission. So, I mean, it depends on what you were defining as being better. You really have to, like, before you get into those types of arguments with things, you got to be like, well, what are we trying to define here? Like, what does better mean? And so I think they're both really amazing sports. And I love them both, and I like watching them both. And I think they're excellent. I think that one-on-one combat arts, boxing, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, sambo, judo, all of them are far superior in the the objective of character building for people than traditional team sports. Team sports, there's always someone to blame. You got a one-on-one sport where you're doing battle with another human being. And it's just one of these things where, like, it's a tough thing to do. And I really believe it develops strong character, hard work ethic, and all these other valuable things that you can take over to your life. Not that team sports don't do that, but in the absence of being able to sort of pass the buck to someone else, you have to take all the blame, but you also get all the glory. And I think it's a beautiful thing. So I don't really like to compare them too much, just because I think they're just different. Very like similar, but very, very different. And if anybody's wrestled and done jiu-jitsu, you understand exactly what I mean.
Yeah. Or if anybody's done jiu-jitsu and came up across a wrestler, and how different of a feel it is, right? Of just, like you say, not one better than the other, but definitely different, and have their own strengths and their own weaknesses, right? Just like team sports and solo sports, they all have things you're going to get from one that you won't get from the other. A lot of crossover. Sticking within the jiu-jitsu realm, then, it seems like there's so many different rule sets, so many different. There's ADCC, there's the submission only, like you say. There's combat jiu-jitsu now. As you've got to watch that evolve over the years, which ones were you happy to see come up? Which ones do you think best encapsulate? And like you say, there's different things. It depends what your goal is, again, for this, but just for personal favorites, even if you don't have any reason behind it, just what gets you excited. What are your favorite rule sets? What are the ones? Are you more of a traditional guy? Do any of these new things coming up excite you? What do you like to watch the best?
So I don't really so here's the thing. When it really boils down to it, it's always about the competitor, right? The competitors are going to make matches. There are some competitors, I don't care what type of tournament you put them into, whether it's points, submission only, whatever, they are exciting to watch because they go for their techniques. There are some competitors that will figure out how to game the system. And they're very good at that, right? It's the same thing that you see in other sports, where, like in American football, where, if there's a certain amount of time left, they'll just take a knee, and they'll like run the clock down. It's the same thing in jiu-jitsu, where they'll just understand how to use the points. Like watch some of the ADCC matches, and you'll have these wrestlers that basically don't do a whole lot. And then they'll like get a shot and get a takedown, and then they get their points for the takedown, they win. And then, you'll watch EBI rules where you'll have guys basically not do anything for 10 minutes. And then in the overtime rounds, they'll just come alive and they'll go after it when they could have tried to finish the match in the first 10 minutes. And so it really comes down to the competitor and their mindsets and getting after it. And so, that said, I love all of it. I like seeing the variety of it. I think some people sometimes don't like that jiu-jitsu doesn't have one unified rule set, but I kind of enjoy that you've got these different flavors of jiu-jitsu that you can sample.
Yeah. So maybe a better way I can ask that question is, of all those rule sets that are out there, which ones do you think lately are attracting the type of competitors that you like to watch, right? Because like something I've been noticing just on YouTube, any of these who's number one matches or whatever, they're bringing a lot of the names of the guys that I've just, from my very admittedly peripheral knowledge of the jiu-jitsu world, it seems like there's really exciting matches and really exciting guys in that. I don't know what is different with the rule set, or maybe it's just the stage and where it is, maybe because it seems like the whole world is moving to Austin, Texas right now, and they're holding them there. Maybe that's what it is. But I'm just curious to you, what the guys that you like to watch, where do you find them moving over to lately?
I think my favorite ones are probably the ones that pay money.
Yeah.
That's the format. And I don't mean this from my own stand, because I mean, I'm an old guy by like high level competitor standards, but a lot of these ones like the who's number one, they pay money and they're getting they're getting some good talent to go after it. And it makes for fun spectating. Yeah. So, I mean, that's probably the as far as a spectator goes, the ones that are paying money is probably the most fun to watch. That said, like I said, I'll watch any of them because I enjoy them, but probably the ones they're making money, that's the ones that are probably going to be the most exciting. And they're typically in no-gi, and they typically pick their people that they're going to compete. So they typically find exciting competitors because they're like, well, we're going to have to pay money for these dudes. We're going to get the best ones we can. And so you end up getting some really fun matches. Right.
And on the flip side of that, you do lose out a little bit of because they are, hand picking the talents. If you do lose out of a little bit of the specialness of those bigger tournaments that anybody can enter, and it's kind of a battle to the top, there is a little bit something to be said about the specialness that creates. But that's what is so nice about having all these things. It's not like you can only watch one or the other. You can take in every which one you want. And that's what's really special about the sport. And I think for anybody that, laments that there's no one place to go, you really need to take a relook at it and see what amazing things are there, right? Like if you could have different football rule sets to really find the ways that what you like about the game, that takes out some of that, the boring stuff. Or I always use this example. If there was a soccer league somewhere in the world that had extremely strict diving rules, I would love that sport to death, right? Like that's the one thing that pulls me away. And it blows my mind that there's not one league in the world like the MLS that doesn't just do like the NHL does in hockey, where you get caught diving once, you get a fine. You get caught diving twice, it's a bigger fine. You get caught diving 3 times, it's a big fine, and your team gets fined, and it progressively goes up. And they can nip that in the bud so easily, and they don't do it. But that's a whole different point. I don't know how we got to talking soccer on a jiu-jitsu podcast.
No. So I brought up American football earlier, and just talking about just different rule sets.
For sure. And then the biggest ones with the different rule sets, those first 3 classes I went to before the pandemic, and I said that, it just wasn't the right fit. And these last 2 months of it is exactly what I had hoped for. And I'm having such a good time. But one of the differences I didn't realize was those first 3 classes was all no-gi, and it was great. And I still had a really good time with it. But then when I put the gi on the first time, I don't know if it's because I was a big guy and it slows things down a little bit. And I was just getting I didn't even have time to think of how I'm getting submitted. I was getting submitted so fast. And then just being able to hold on, my enjoyment went up so much. And what kind of makes me sad is I'm getting into it, I feel like, as this gi world is kind of going down, all these young guys coming up, oh no, the gi, that it's all in the no gi stuff. And I'm kind of sad. How do you see that? Do you see that as well, that most of the guys coming in are a lot more excited about the no-gi? Or do you think there is a world for the more traditional side of it? And do you think that'll always kind of have a really strong niche that will carry on, even no matter the heights that the no-gi world gets to?
Yeah, the gi will always be around.
Yeah,
I mean, like you'll have people that'll like. I mean, the no-gi has always been the object of choice for paid jiu-jitsu tournaments since I was a white belt, right?
Really?
And so if you're since I was a white belt, the best paying tournaments were always no-gi, always been no-gi. From the ADCC to even local ones, it was always no-gi.
Yeah.
And gi tournaments had never been the highest paying.
Yeah.
Now, when you're getting young people in today and they're looking at it and they're like, hey, I want to be an athlete and I want to get paid to do this stuff. Well, then where are they going to go? Right. They're going to go to jiu-jitsu, but they're going to go where the money is. Right. But if you're a hobbyist, or if you're a person that just likes doing jiu-jitsu because you like doing jiu-jitsu, there's always going to be a gi around for you.
For sure.
The gi is always going to be a part of it, and people will still do it. It's not going to be dead. It's just one of these things where the no-gi has always been where the money's at. And as people get into things now where, which is strange to me, but like they get into it and they're like, I'm going to be the next this, that, whatever. And they want to make the money. That's what they're going to go after.
Right. Right. I'm curious, just for yourself, taking, the competitive aspect out of it and the money aspect out of it, of just pure enjoyment. You're going to an open roll with buddies and you just want to enjoy it and have fun. Do you have any preference yourself between gi and no gi?
I do them both. I train
Yeah.
every one of them each week. I roll in both. My preference, I enjoy no-gi more.
Yeah.
Primarily because it's a little bit more fluid and it's a little bit easier on my body. I find the gi, I get little like injuries more often. That just your body gets tangled up and it's friction and stuff like that. But I like no gi more.
Yeah. Okay. And that makes sense. And I found that real big step up in enjoyment off the start of having something to hold on to and slowing down the game a little bit has also allowed for the space for the understanding to be there. So now when I do roll nogi, it's so much that enjoyment has almost risen back to the same level because it was just that initial loss in that ocean of not knowing what you're doing. I found that gi just was a little life raft just to get me to, it was still getting smacked all over, turned upside down, didn't know what was going on, but it slowed it down that half second so that even though I didn't know what was going on, I almost slowed it down enough that I could process it afterwards to understand what happened. Whereas in nogi, it was almost, not only do I not know what happened, but there's no way I could even go back through it to process it because it was all too fast. And then once I've got to that point, now when I roll gi or no gi, I can slow it down. I'm a little bit better and I'm not getting so flopped around like a fish. It felt like, unless I'm going against, anybody with any sort of, color on their belt, I'm usually still getting tossed around.
Yeah.
I'm curious. So then you said that the business venture was new. That was the things that you were learning on the fly and that you had support systems and you laid that all very, very nicely. The last couple of years, anybody that's owned a business has been through something really different and had to, no matter what skills they had learned, they had to relearn and learn new ones. And just yesterday on the MMA Hour, John Kavanaugh was, talking about that. His dream of all this money he'd made, he put it into this giant gym of the monster out in Ireland that there was supposed to be this, his pinnacle that was going to be his retirement. This was his gym. And then COVID hit and how he's only been able to have it open. And that's one story, but there's hundreds, thousands of these stories of people with gyms that have struggled through it. I'm curious, just personally for yourself and maybe within your organization, the gym owners, how has that been to watch of that struggle that everyone's been under these last couple of years with trying to keep things open and keep things moving and keep this amazing thing that is jiu-jitsu available for those students that you care so much about?
I mean, for most of us, it really depended on whether or not you lived in a country or a state with a ridiculous government.
Yeah. I'm in Canada right now where it's crazy.
Yeah. Like, I mean, it's one of these things where like, how's it working? Like, I mean, you know what I mean? It's like one of these things where I'm not a, what's the word? I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I'm not this, that. I don't think that, that there's all this, I'm not a hardcore conspiracy guy. Right. Yeah. But at the same time, when you look at it, you're like, how well are your reactions working to quell this thing? It's not working. So, and at the same time now, especially with all the therapeutics we have, with like all the different things that are coming out, we've got so much better ways to treat things.
Yeah.
And it is what it is, so the, if you were lucky enough to like, I'm lucky enough to live in a area where we shut down for we shut down for about 2 months. And then in our town, there were some really like large demonstrations and riots that were going on. Right. Yeah. Like I differentiate the two because I have students that are police officers and they told me that there were basically two groups. Yeah. There was one group that would come and demonstrate. And then there would be another group that came in that like were people from other parts of the country that weren't from this city and they were coming in afterwards. And so because they arrested a lot of them, they're like, you are not from here. Right. You're just tearing things up. And but they were doing that. So I'm like, well, if they're doing that, then I'm going to train. Right. And I trained. And so, and I, was that. And luckily here's the thing that was really good about our gym. Like we had to get creative. First off, I didn't do any of that Zoom crap. Like let's do classes on Zoom. I'm like, I'm not doing classes on Zoom. That's stupid. But we got into the gym and, I got into the gym. We rented out basically all of our equipment to our students. Yeah. And we also, this is a big thing about like business owners. Your wealth is not in like the one-time sign up your front end membership or anything like that's not your wealth. That's your income that brings an income to the business, right? When you make a sale or when you bring in someone, right? the wealth is in the relationships with the people.
Yeah.
Right. That's it. Right.
Sure.
And if you don't understand that and you don't put anything towards that, then you really don't get it.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of the other numbers you really have to be mindful of as a business owner with those things. And this is not just like gyms. This is like everything from retail to anything.
Yeah.
So we had a good relationship with our people, and so we lost very few students. And then again, luckily we're in a state where they kind of let up on us. They didn't go crazy and shut us down. And so I really feel for people that are like, in the states that were like, cause I had friends that were up in like California, New York, and over in Ireland and Europe. And they're just like, they're getting destroyed.
Yeah.
And they really, there's nothing that they can do business wise to keep their actual physical gym afloat.
Yeah.
I mean, they're doing other things to manage, to do okay. But like, you're dealing with a government that basically just decided that we're going to do this. And then here you go, you know? So.
And you see, like you said, even if it's not working, just, in Canada, we're doing the same things we were doing in March of 2020, the same lockdowns, the same stuff. It's crazy to watch. Plus, I mean, a million other, really draconian stuff that, I mean, any true red blood.
Yeah. You guys got it worse than us.
Oh man, it's atrocious, man. If you don't have a proof of vaccination, you have to have a QR code that you scan to get in anywhere but a grocery store and a gas station. You're not allowed to see anybody. You're not allowed to, go over to anybody's house. You're not supposed to anyway. I mean, a lot of people aren't listening to this. I mean,
ridiculous.
It's absolutely ridiculous. None of it has ever made any sense. And, hopefully people are starting to, but it's in deep and it's tough, and luckily there's been great gyms. They were one of the first people in Canada that kind of stood up and said, hey, this isn't all right. And a lot of the gyms kind of flew in the face of those rules and stayed open and said, hey, people need to be healthy in that. And, but even still, they're still trying to crack down on them. When we're rolling jiu-jitsu, you see, the enforcement come in every once in a while to the teacher has to leave the class and go, smooth things over. And the gym that I go to here is so amazing. They're such good people and they're very honorable.
Now here's a question for you.
For sure.
Have you had a large number of people die in your gym?
No.
That's the whole thing. It's like I've met several people. I know dozens and dozens and dozens of gym owners. And I've talked to them and consulted to them. I was like, how's everybody doing? Whatever. And some of them obviously would have situations where someone had COVID, right?
Yeah.
And they got over it fine, or maybe they, even me, like I got COVID and I was vaccinated, got COVID, and I had some after effects for about a month. And, and by after effects, it means like I could lift weights and go for a bike ride. Yeah. But whenever I tried to roll really hard, I couldn't roll really hard. So it's still pretty good, right? It like 2 days and it was over. And then like in a month, I was like doing that. And, but I had none of them had like, and I know that there are people have passed away and I feel bad for them, but it's not, you're not dealing something with like, that's just wiping out healthy people in mass. I mean, again, it is what it is. Like, there are healthy people that do pass away,
for sure.
Just as there are healthy people that pass away from all sorts of illnesses all the time. But you're not having that. And we have to be honest with what's really going on. And I don't feel like there's being an honest conversation with what's really going on.
Right.
It's just one of these things where like, there's far more creative solutions that could be done to manage the whole situation rather than just telling everybody all right, we got to lock up. And even now, I feel like most of the statistics are saying that most of the people that are passing away now from it are just unvaccinated people, which again, I don't know if that's true. I know several people that are down here that aren't vaccinated and they're healthy as can be. So whatever. But again, if it is true, then okay, fine. Just let things go and let people make their decisions.
Right.
Simple as that. Right.
And that's the thing. And like you say, there's so many things that don't really add up. And you talk about all the therapeutics that are available, but in Canada, they block them actively. It's illegal to ask for ivermectin. It's illegal to ask for all these things. They
like monoclonal antibodies
don't have them. The treatment, they tell you to go sit at home. If you're on death's door, come to the hospital, put you on a ventilator. They don't use any of those things. It's sad. I know,
because the monoclonal antibodies is like, that's the thing, bro. I know. I mean, I've had friends get it and they're like, they take it and then the next day they're like, I feel better. It's like, well, ain't that something,
exactly.
And to me, it's like, and the pharmaceutical companies are still making that thing. Like, so what's the problem?
I don't know,
You
man.
know?
It doesn't make a lot of sense. It's like they just don't want to admit that there's any other treatment. They just no, the vaccine is the only thing, and there's hesitancy around it. We don't want to talk about anything else that might increase that hesitancy, because someone might think, well, I'm not going to get it if there's a good treatment out there, and maybe that's the reason why. But it seems like there's a lot more questionable things going on other than that. But yeah, I know it's sad. I've had, because I've been vocal about this on my podcast, but I've had people where they say, hey, and this is heartbreaking to me, but they say, hey, my mom's, they're trying to put her on a ventilator and they won't.
It's terrible.
They won't give any treatment. They won't try any of these things. Do you have like ivermectin? Can we just try it? And they're coming to me and I'm like, well, I don't know how I got roped into this, like it's hard enough for me to get my hands on this stuff, I have to pull some strings and go through some back doors. But then you hear these anecdotal stories of people from my hometown, a small town, I know 2 or 3 people that they said were in that situation. They pulled the old, the horse dewormer and went and got the veterinary ivermectin, which is the same exact thing. It's just how they, and it pulled these, it could have been just coincidence that that was just they pulled out of it themselves, but just miraculously from administration, they really turned it around. And that's like down the list, there's probably 3 or 4 things above that they could have been given, like the monoclonal antibodies, which seems to be
the
top.
The monoclonal antibodies. That's just like, that's such a great thing. It's such a great, a great tool. I've looked at the ivermectin stuff and it's like, maybe it is, maybe it is helping. I don't know. But like the monoclonal antibodies is absolutely helping. And again, it's a pharmaceutical product.
Yeah.
So I don't see what the issue is, if you wanted to get someone to become to convert a non-believer.
Yeah.
You get a guy who's vaccine hesitant. Okay, cool. Give him these monoclonal antibodies and now he's using a pharmaceutical product. He feels great afterwards. Maybe he's like, maybe it's not so bad.
Yeah.
Maybe this stuff, maybe this stuff does work, and again, like I said, I don't know, man. I don't know everything. I don't like how things are being manipulated, and questions aren't being answered accurately and things aren't being talked about accurately, because it just creates division amongst people.
Exactly.
And people can't even talk about it. And we've gotten to such a place in our culture now where if you say something that someone doesn't want to hear, they get absolutely furious.
Yeah.
And they just want to tar and feather you and call you names and everything else. Yeah. It's ridiculous.
It's sad. And I think places like Canada, like Australia, like these places that are the most heavy on the authoritarian side of it, it creates more of that division and it has people at their throats even more. It's crazy. Whereas Canada is such a polite place and usually people are so loving and caring and care about their neighbor, and that has gone out the window a lot these last couple of years. And I'm sure deep down that's still there, but it's very sad to watch everyone just get pitted against each other when really, a couple of years ago they would have been arm in arm, loving each other, giving each other hugs and kisses, and now they got the pitchforks out. And
it's still there.
Yeah,
the difference, it's still there, and this is the thing. All that stuff is still there. It's just not there maybe on social media.
Yeah,
right. It's not there in the news, and so those things are very, very. They're not accurate. Though I see all kinds of stuff that they talk about on the news and social media. And I go to the gym, I go to the supermarket, I go to just the normal places we would go, and I don't see any of that stuff. I'm like, well, what are you guys talking about? Where's all this division amongst people and stuff? Because we're all cool and we don't really care. It's again, it's a message from the top being sent down, and then you create division amongst the masses of people. This is what I believe in. It's always been this way. This is I just bought a TV I just bought a TV. I own one now for the first time since I was 18.
Yeah.
And I remember the reason why I got rid of the TV in the first place was because I hated watching the news. I hated it because it was always doom and gloom and everything's bad. And it's the same stuff over and over again. And every 2 weeks, it's something else is really bad, and if people really took a second and opened up their eyes, it's how come every 2 weeks we got something else to be angry about, at least in the United States. I have no idea what the news is up there, but at least in the United States, it's every 2 weeks. It's why are we so angry about something new? I didn't even know this existed until an hour ago. And now I'm angry about it. And I'm being, I'm ready to jump a line and proselytize people, so it's absurd. So, but yeah.
Yeah. And I think you're exactly on the money with the fact that it's all on social media, it's online. And when you're interacting with people, it's all that same thing. And people are a lot more caring and loving to each other. That's still there. But unfortunately, when they say you're not allowed to see anybody, you shouldn't be seeing people, it kind of makes that the only world you have available to you is that online world where that division is. And it's unfortunate where the antidote to that division is just going out and seeing your neighbor and having a talk with him and that's the one thing they're trying to tell you not to do. It's a little bit unfortunate, but you know what, that was that was an hour of of a really special conversation for myself. I have to say it one more time. I've gotten so much from you over the years of watching before I even started jiu-jitsu. And then especially once I started it, it was a whole different level. I think there's thousands and thousands of people around the world that could say the exact same thing as me. And I'm just glad that I get the opportunity to say that genuine thank you from myself and from all those people that'll listen to this one day and say, oh, I wish I could say that thank you to Chewy. This is their thank you as well. And just for giving me your time today. I know you're a busy guy, and this was very special for me. I've been looking forward to this all week. Since the day you said yes, I've been just like a kid in the candy store, just over the moon excited to talk to you. And just want to say a really genuine thank you for that.
Nice chat with you, Nick, and good luck with the podcast as things continue on.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I hope we can do this again sometime.
Absolutely. Take it easy, brother.
Right. Thank you.
All right. Hope you guys enjoyed that episode. I enjoyed it immensely to record it, and it was so meaningful to me to be able to talk to someone like Chewy and have him give me his time. I know he's a busy man, and for him to, kind of put everything on hold for an hour just to converse with me just makes me feel really special, and it's kind of one of those little hints that you're on the right track with what you're doing. Experiences like that, that's what this is all about. It's not about, fame or money or anything. It's about conversations like I got to have with somebody that I really look up to, like Chewy. And that's really special to me. And I just want to say thank you, I guess, to you guys listening, because you guys listening to this is what allows me to live that dream. And I'm so thankful. And I hope you guys get to hear that passion in my voice and live vicariously through me a little bit in chasing this dream, and feel a little bit like you're chasing a dream as well. I know that's how I felt when I was listening to all the hundreds of hours of podcasts that I was putting in a month, just listening. I used to always feel like that I was, living vicariously through these, young comics or whoever they were that were coming up that had these podcasts that were chasing something. I felt like I was living a little bit through them, and I hope that you guys get a little bit of that through me. And yeah, other than that, if you could do all those fun things I mentioned in every intro and outro, following the social medias, going to the guest social medias, whatever the guest has to sell, buy it, let them know you heard them here. Those really go a long way to helping this podcast grow and be successful. And other than that, just have a great holidays, and I hope you're happy and healthy. I hope you get some good turkey in you, or whatever you eat on the holidays, or if you don't celebrate, whatever. Just have good days. Just have good weeks. Have a good rest of the month, and see you on the next one with some more great episodes heading your way. All right. Bye.